Hello, hello, hello. How you doing today? My name is Daniel, and this is episode 39 of the Engineering Success Podcast. Appreciate you listening today. Hopefully you enjoyed listening to episode 38. If you haven't listened to it yet, make sure you do so. I had the pleasure of having a wonderful guest, Mark Levine, on from Thermosystems USA and the ABCs of Control System Engineering, and we had a phenomenal interview about everything that you need to know about trying to become an engineer. If you're in high school and dreaming about being an engineer, if you're in college trying to get your first internship, if you're in graduating from college and applying for your first round of jobs, everything you need to know from resumes to interviews and everything, that video covers on it all. So make sure to watch that video. I will put the link in the description box of this video. Or you can just go to my channel. Actually, just do that. Just go to my channel or go down to the previous episodes if you're listening to the audio version. Make sure you listen to it. That was a really cool interview. Um, what's going on with me? Let's talk about the podcast. So, Spotify Anchor is now Spotify for podcasters. So you might have realized that you're no longer getting my Anchor ad anymore, and that is because Spotify yanked it from me. So I have no other source of ad revenue right now coming into the pod, which is fair because I was making like 5 cents an episode, so really not a big deal. But Spotify has created this new threshold called I don't even know what it's called. It's called whatever it is. I'll look it up on my phone right here. I need to have 100 listeners on Spotify in the last 60 days to qualify for ad revenue, and it's called ambassador ads. And I currently have 20. If you're watching on the screen, so what does that mean? That means that you can really, if you can't support the podcast as a top tier supporter yourself, you can really help the podcast out by sharing it. So I really appreciate those of you that either engage with it in YouTube in the comment section. Please do that. Those of you that share it on your own social medias, and honestly, just by word of mouth, that's the best way to share the podcast. If you know somebody that's in high school, college, early engineering career, this is the podcast for them. If you're dreaming of being an engineer, if you're working on becoming an engineer, or if you're just starting your engineering career journey, this is the podcast for you. So, thank you guys for listening. Let's get into it with the shout outs. Shout out to our top tier supporters of the podcast. Shout out to John Ott. Thank you, John, for your continued support of the podcast. You can join John with getting a shout out at the beginning of every single episode of the podcast for $10 a month. It's about the cost of Paramount Plus. It's cheaper than Netflix. It's like the cost of Hulu. So with that little bit of money, it really helps me go a long way. I use that money in the beginning of the podcast. I invested a lot of my money into getting the video camera and the microphone and but now I use it for softwares like for example I pay like 25 bucks a month to keep my website up to date, www.engringsuccess.com, engineeringsuccess.com. I have an email now, so there are some costs that come along with running the podcast, and every little bit helps. So really appreciate you guys for supporting the podcast or considering to support the podcast. And $10 a month gets you or any safe for work phrase said on the podcast. You just let me know what you want, and you also go on my website on our Hall of Fame. Well, actually, our current top tier supporters list. I'll pull that up right there. You'll go on the website. You'll get an advertisement. So hey, if you're a business, I don't really care at this point. I'm happy to welcome a business in that's super affordable advertising, $10, and you just live on my website and you get shouted out at the beginning of every single podcast episode. So just a super affordable way for if you have a small business to shout yourself out. So anyways, thank you so much, guys, for that. For those of y'all that are tracking what's going on with the baby, I'm still upstairs in what's going to be her nursery or their nursery. For those of you that don't know the gender yet, just pretend you didn't hear that. But we're still setting up the nursery upstairs, and and so we're gonna start moving some furniture out of this room soon. Baby showers in a couple weeks, so by the time the baby shower is over, we're gonna have all of our help in the house to help us take care of moving all that stuff. So yeah, so not really not really too much cooking yet, but I mean, obviously, those things around the corner, and I felt the baby kick for the first time, so that was pretty exciting for me. So I just can't wait to welcome her. So, yeah. All right. Well, let's get into the podcast. You know how we start every single episode. We start every single episode the same way, and that's with link. Just kidding. We have a 5-star review to read. So, and I'll be honest, this one wasn't put on Apple Podcasts, but it doesn't really matter. If you give a testimonial or review the podcast, just send it to me. Send it to me at Daniel at ENGRingsuccess.com. Kick it to me via email and I'll read it on the podcast. It's a great way to get a shout out without financially supporting the podcast. So here's one for you guys. This is one of the credible ones. Now, this is from our interview with Mark Levine. I've seen many of your casts, and they're excellent. So, those of you tuning in for the first time, follow this podcast. There aren't a lot of real credible ones out there. This is one of the credible ones. Dan is just a pleasure to talk with. He's a great interviewer. He does a great job. Stick with it. Thank you, Mark. And it's right there. The link to episode 38 is literally right there. All right. So that was our 5-star review for this week. Now we can get into our recurring segment this week in LinkedIn lunatics or career craziness. All right. Here we go. First one. Seeking ladies? Agree? So I think our boy here, if this is a real account, which they have 290 connections. I think our boy here has misunderstood what the purpose of LinkedIn is. LinkedIn is not a dating app, people. LinkedIn is a social networking app for professionalism and career development. So, for those of you that are looking to seek ladies or gentlemen on LinkedIn, why don't we not use? I appreciate that he's straightforward, so we can know to avoid at all costs. But why on LinkedIn? And who is this guy? Yeah, it's more like Kingston. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's kind of ridiculous. But you know, I'd say 10 out of 10. That's not what LinkedIn is for. So, just as a reminder to everybody, LinkedIn is not a dating app. So, avoid doing that because nobody wants to be harassed by you on LinkedIn. So, just uh just stop if you think about hitting on somebody on LinkedIn, don't do it. If you're thinking about sliding into those DMs with something inappropriate like a picture or phrases, they don't want it. They don't want to see what you have to say to them. LinkedIn is where people are trying to be professional and grow their careers, and honestly, ladies and gentlemen, if somebody slides into your DMs with something inappropriate on LinkedIn, I mean, I feel like you should be able to expose. I don't know if like what the legal ramifications are, but if you get an unsolicited thing, I mean, you should be able to put these people on blast. So, um, maybe look into what the ramifications of that are legally before you do it. But I feel like, you know what? Can you post pictures you received unsolicited online? Um, so the act of sending unwanted imagery is against the law depending on where you're at. So, yeah, what I would say is um, reposting it could fall into character categories of revenge porn, maybe. I don't know. So don't do that, maybe. But you can definitely consult somebody to get that person because I mean that should be just uh, you shouldn't be allowed to do that. So, all right. Next one. This one is from r/recruiting hell.
Was asked for my college transcripts, from 15 YRS ago. Someone confirm for me how absolutely BS this request is. I have nearly 20 years of experience in the field and for the position I applied for. They recruited me. Then turned around and asked me to produce my college transcripts, from 15 years ago, so that they could confirm that I could qualify for an interview with them. I laughed on the phone, the recruiter was not in fact joking. I told them I could provide a professional reference from every single school that was on my resume. Nope, they wanted to see if I had enough credits to qualify to interview with them. I hung up on her. Edit, this was for an $18/HR job in early childhood ed. It is not the norm for this profession. I believe it was to weed out older candidates. Edit 2, credentials in this field are handled through the state. Every teacher is certified and awarded a registry number which they provide on acceptance of a position. Background checks, accreditation, fingerprinting, everything, is handled through the state. Thank you for everyone pointing out that children deserve caregivers that are accredited and accountable. I agree, that's why I have been in the state's registry for over a decade.
Yeah, so my initial gut feeling on this one was to kind of react the same way that this person did. But then I just kind of I just was sitting on the couch with my wife, who's a teacher, and she was like, "Yeah, just request your transcript from the university." So I don't know if this person realizes that that may be an option for them, but usually the university registrar's office or something like that does office of records does keep your transcript on file. So if you're in a similar situation, just file a request with your university for transcripts. I went to my university's website. Well, I'm going to Trinity University transcript request. And if I click transcript request, I can go to the office of the registrar and look at that. Alumni, you can request your official transcript. So, and they'll get it to you within 3 to 4 days. So, not a big deal, maybe. Maybe not as big of a deal as this person made it out to be. I mean, I maybe their comment would be correct, is that it was trying to weed out older people if they thought that older people couldn't request a transcript from the university, or the universities wouldn't keep them on file. But my university had a thing last time I requested a transcript. It was like, if your transcript is like from before 1997, then we'll send you a. They had another way of doing it because it's stored in like a different older archival system. So I mean, usually universities have a document management system for storing stuff like this. So, yeah, I'm gonna say not as big of a deal as this person made it out to be. But hey, I mean, yeah, that is frustrating, especially whenever you're already accredited through your state. But it seems like the you listed the state accreditation has background checks, accreditation, fingerprinting, and everything. But and I'm sure I assume that part of that accreditation portion is validating your transcript. But maybe these people don't have. I don't know the what the program is for your state. Maybe they don't have access to that database. Maybe they have to pay for that database, and maybe there's or maybe this is just their process. So, yeah, it's frustrating. Let's see what the comments say. Comments say, ask for company financials going back 15 years to ensure if they have enough stability to offer you job security. Um, I was recently asked for a university transcript. I graduated over 30 years ago. Well, I'll be honest. If I was in my industry, if I was applying for an engineering job, I would expect to get asked for a university transcript. I would, because, I mean, people put education credentials on their resume, and you have those people that come up through the field as designers, and they don't actually have an engineering degree, but they're very knowledgeable about engineering concepts. But maybe there's an itch somewhere in there to fake an engineering degree. I don't know, but yeah, I wouldn't think it's that difficult um to ask for a transcript. To be honest, I really don't. Um, it's not that hard to get one. So I'm going to divulge, well, not divulge, but I'm going to stray from everybody else and say not really that crazy of an ask. So let me know if you disagree down in the comments below. All right, next one. What has LinkedIn become? All right, so this is Rohan's, who is passionately curious and often wrong and always learning. This is his post on LinkedIn. Rachel is one of the hottest girls out there, the fire of your wildest dreams, the envy of everyone you've ever known, and I used to date her. She was the heartthrob of every guy in college, and I got her. I first asked out Monica, and Phoebe and even Janice, but they all turned me down. I was so dejected at the time that I almost considered going for Chandler. Those were the worst days of my life. My self confidence was completely shattered. Okay, homophobic. All right, carry on. But then one day I found out that Rachel had been through a terrible breakup and was on a rebound spree. I stalked her for many weeks and then even asked her out a few times and was rejected. Okay, so you're homophobic and you're a stalker. But this time I wasn't going to give up. Her friend had signed her up to try speed dating. This was my one chance and I grabbed it. For 5 glorious minutes, I dated Rachel. I was given the chance that most would give an arm and a leg for, and then I blew it. We don't talk about that. Over a decade later, it's still the highlight of my life. Of course, we never saw each other again, mostly because she wanted nothing more to do with me, but we don't talk about that either. Anyway, connect with me on LinkedIn to learn why you too should date Rachel. Follow me on Twitter to learn why you should never date Rachel. Hit me up on Instagram to see that one picture I have with Rachel. Check out my latest video on YouTube on how you too can crack Rachel. Subscribe to my weekly newsletter where I continue to share decade old insights from my 5 minute speed date with Rachel. Tip me on OnlyFans where I talk about my dreams and nightmares about Rachel. Like this post and leave comment below if you too aspire to chase Rachel. P.S. Rachel is not for everyone, but if you do everything I say above, she can be for you. Yeah, I can't even tell if this is satire or serious. And that's what this person said. Like I don't even care. Like, dude, even if this is satire, why the heck is it on your LinkedIn? I don't get it. I mean, this person says it looks like a satirical dig at the lunatics who post cringe content, just not a very good one. I usually like this dude's content a lot, but clearly he tried something that didn't work today, and it seems like he's already realized it and taken it down. Yeah, I mean, come on, man. It's just not. It's a little bit homophobic, a little bit stalkerish, which I mean, I guess you're implying that to the other people that are posting on LinkedIn, maybe not yourself, but yeah, this is a swing and a miss. It looks like it was an attempt at trying to be satirical on LinkedIn, and it was just not a winner. So sorry, Rohan. You have tried to make fun of the LinkedIn lunatics, and you have become one. What is that saying? I try to destroy my enemies, but then I become one. I don't know. All right, that was not ideal. All right, next one. Basically, paid an exposure with extra steps. All right, this is about Dickie Bush, and I don't really feel bad about exposing Dickie Bush because of what he writes here. Working for free when you don't have skills is asking the employer to pay you. Working for free when you're extremely skilled is the quickest way to get an employer to pay you. Too many people hate the idea of free work. Every person on my team at the moment started by offering to do something for free. And each of them did an A+ job and showed elite skill, which made hiring them an absolute no brainer. Don't think you're too good for free work. Thanks, Dickie. That's so good. It's terrible. Free work is, I mean, it's exploitative. So, what Dickie is saying is that please join my company where I exploit people for their labor. Please work for me for free so that way I can exploit you. Yes, all these people that are currently on my team did something for free, but let's not talk about the hundreds and hundreds of other people that I exploited and got free labor from because I don't know how to properly run a business model. I help beginner writers start writing along. So basically, he has people do what I'm guessing is happening is people write, and then he has people edit and proofread and give advice. And as an example, as an quote unquote example, to see if they're qualified to help as beginner writers. All right. And then he just uses it anyways, and then decides later whether or not he wants to. So, as part of your interview, you're actually already doing output for the company, or as part of your probationary period with Dickie Bush's company. And that is because Dickie Bush does not make enough money with his business model to actually pay his employees. So, he'll just get people to give free writing tips and then he'll decide whether or not to hire them. And he'll probably string out that process as long as possible so that way he can get as many free edits for his little website as he possibly can. So shout out to Dickie Bush. Um, yeah, I mean, for my business that makes negative $25 a month, because that's how much it costs to keep my website alive, and I don't make that much money. I don't have people that I mean, I have people that are guests on my podcast, but that's the transactional relationship, right? They're usually on to promote something else. Now, otherwise, they're my friend and they're doing me a favor, and then I thank them profusely. But what I don't do is I don't go out and have somebody edit my videos for free for exposure, or edit my podcast for exposure, because that is like the core of what I do, is generate a video and generate a podcast. And the core of what he does is probably um, giving writing tips. So what the core of he does is that he gets people to also give those writing tips and edit papers, probably, or writing samples for free, does not pay them, and then charges the client money for it. And that is terrible. So let's go to the comment section. If you can't afford to pay people for work, you shouldn't be in business. My time is given for free to charity only. I decided to update his profile picture. This is a risk. This is a risk. I don't know what this video is going to be. You know what? I'm not going to look at that picture. That's a risk. Wow, these nerds on the internet sure love my content. I must be doing something right. Yeah, I actually am definitely too good for free work. What's that? Um, Reading this and his other LinkedIn posts, nobody pays him to help them with writing online because he's nowhere as good as it at it as he believes. Oh, that sucks. Dickie Bush, is that real? I worked for his buddy, Michael Hunt. That's weird. I work with Mike's friend, Huge Jazz. All right. So maybe this is satire. Um, I don't know. But anyways, if you can't afford to pay your people, your employees, then maybe your business model sucks. All right. Speaking of, I should have to pay my employees. I should have to pay my employees. As an employer, why shouldn't I be able to hire teams for free? What the else are they going to do during the summer months? Me hiring them for free, and maybe me receiving a stipend from the government for doing so, means that I am keeping teens off the street, keeps the crime rate down, and prevents drug addiction in the future. F this S. These kids are getting experience. I am educating them out of my pocket. Yes, I was fined today for not paying my staff a wage, and I am pissed. If only there was a word or term for making somebody work for free. Well, if you just called the employment an unpaid internship, it would be illegal. Like, yeah, you should. I don't care what positive good you think you're doing for society. Having people do labor for you for free is bad. So, would not recommend if you're running a business. If you're running a business, I recommend not having free labor working for your business. And I also don't recommend having an unpaid internship, because that's bad. So here's how you should do an internship. Exactly. I'm a software engineer and get interns twice a year. We treat them exactly the same way as employees. We pay them as full employees for the few months that they're there, but they strictly focus on their projects. I'm no way saying unpaid internships should exist. They're absolutely unethical and they shouldn't exist. So, yes. If you are thinking about running an unpaid internship, or you have an unpaid internship, screw you. I don't like you. I don't like your business model. I don't like your company. I never want to work for your company. So I don't care that I'm saying screw you. Because screw you. Like, screw off. You suck. You're a terrible, terrible, terrible thing. So, all right. Well, that was this week in LinkedIn lunatics and career craziness. I'm going to take a break because obviously my voice is shot, and then I'll be right back. So, catch you on the other side. All right, and we're back. So, I'm going to start this one off with some really cool career advice. So I spend a lot of time on different subreddits, and one subreddit I spend time on is r/jobs. And I've seen some really good advice here. So I'm going to share it. I'm going to read it. It's long. I'm not going to put you through the pain of hearing Robo Voice read it because, I mean, let's be real. It's not as good at reading as I am. So I will read it and I'm going to kind of talk through it as I go. So he says, I have interviewed, or they said, I've interviewed and hired hundreds of people. I stumbled across this channel and read some of the posts, and it occurred to me that there are a lot of questions and opinions being floated, but I haven't seen any actionable advice. Okay. I have seen some bad advice. So, first, who am I? I work these days in technology, but I've been a carpenter. I've worked in the marine industry as a boat captain and various scut work jobs. I've been a graphic designer and I've been a project management leader for 25 plus years with VP, SVP, and CPO titles. I've worked at huge companies, mid-sized companies, and I've founded 4 companies, 2 of which I was the CEO. So at the risk of pontificating, I thought I'd share some thoughts. Now, this is some really good advice, and I really like that they established their credibility at the beginning. So here we go. First, people are looking for coworkers, meaning people who they like, who are at the same level of competence as the rest of the team, not experience, who get things done, who are reliable, and who are creative problem solvers. Even at unsophisticated jobs, being a creative problem solver is a huge plus. You have to come across as likable, and ideally, you want the interviewer to start rooting for you to be successful. And the same applies for whenever because again, whenever they get there, do you want them to be successful? Yes. You're my teammate. I want you to be successful. I want you to be able to solve problems. I want to be able to try to teach you something, and then you take the time to learn things. So they want to find these things out in the interview. Like, for example, if you have a teammate that just repeatedly cannot get it, even though you've explained it hundreds and hundreds of times, and they're not willing to go try to find the solutions and take the extra step, and you're having to walk them through every single step of their role, that's terrible. So we're trying to weed those people out in the interview. All right, continuing. So, how do you do that? You have to arrive at an interview ready to tell stories that capture the interviewer's attention and illustrate your value. Most interviewers are not good at interviewing, so you need to help them along. And let's be honest, most interviews hit on the same questions every single time. So, this is me adding here. You got, tell me about yourself. So you need to know where to start. Mark and I talked about this in the last podcast episode, but you need to know where to start with that. Tell me about myself question. What's a reasonable place and time for you to start telling them about yourself? Is it in the beginning of how I was born and Harris Southwest Hospital? I wasn't. Or is it like, well, I've always wanted to be an engineer. I grew up and I did this and I did this and I went to school for it and I learned this and I'm really glad that I went to that school because it really excelled at preparing me for this. And then I got my first job doing this because I'm interested in this. And now, uh, experience. Now here I am and I have all this experience and I am so well fit for this position. You've already answered all their questions about whether or not you have the background and experience to do the position. And that all comes from your story of tell me about yourself. Also, knowing how to answer the question, well, what's the time you had to collaborate in a difficult situation or deal with conflict? I mean, every single basic interview screen asks that question. You should know the answer. You should know the story. And you don't have to know it word for word, but you should know what you want to talk about. You shouldn't be reaching whenever you're getting that question. All right, so carrying on with what he says. These days, I screen for 4 things when I hire. I believe these things are universally desirable and necessary in order to be successful at any job: grit, integrity, empathy, and creativity. I believe that if you can exhibit and illustrate these 4 traits in an interview, you have a much better chance of being hired. So, what do these things mean and how do you illustrate them? 1. Grit. This is the ability to get a task or project done, even if you run into obstacles. You need to illustrate that you have initiative, that you can identify and solve problems that are blocking you. Sometimes this means asking for help, especially if you're junior, but mostly it means you keep on trying even if things get hard. Again, somebody with grit, me elaborating on here, somebody with grit is the kind of person that's not going to say, "Hey, man, I couldn't do it. Oh, that's outside my purview. Oh, I only read the bid documents. I don't read the contract. You have the contract. We gave it to you, or you know where it's located. It's like it's not the person that says, "Hey, oh, I can't find this." Well, did you look for it? Because we gave you the resources on where all those things are stored. We've taught you like 10,000 times that these things are stored in here, here, and here. Did you look? Did you even try? Or do I need to go and spoon feed it to you? All right. So have a story queued up. he goes on, that you can use to illustrate your grit. Tell a story about a really hard problem you had to solve. Summarize the background, explain what obstacles you ran into and how you solved them. For a first job, if you're junior, telling a story that isn't work related is okay, or a situation where you recognized a problem beyond your skill level and escalated to get help from your boss or a senior colleague, and then completed the project. Sometimes showing that you're a team player and that you have the humility to ask for help is better than struggling alone. However, if you're more senior, showing that you know how to get things done independently is probably more important. All right, he goes on. 2. Integrity. Are you trustworthy and reliable? Illustrate that you have integrity by telling about a time you have a moral or ethical quandary and had to make the hard decision to do the right thing. Or if you're brave, a time where you did the wrong thing but learned from that failure. To be clear, I'm not talking about a time you made a mistake. I'm talking about a time you failed. At the time you did the wrong thing, you knew it, you made the decision and faced some consequences. Of course, it's important that if you go down that path, that you're focused on what you learned and why you won't make that mistake again. This can be really important if you have anything in your background that could become visible through a simple social media search or background check. Showing vulnerability in an interview, especially around integrity, can be the thing that gets an interviewer to start rooting for your success. So, I think this is important. I mean, I want to work with somebody that I can trust, that's going to be my teammate, not somebody that's going to go behind my back. So, good advice. 3. Empathy. This is the ability to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, walk around, see something from their perspective, and make decisions based on that insight. I would tell a story about a time where you struggled to work with somebody else. Oh, does that make sense? That's a question that they already asked. They ask about a time you struggled to work with somebody else. So maybe already have that story queued up. And if it's natural in conversation, just go ahead and tell the story because you're going to answer the question for them. They don't even have to ask it. Good idea. I would tell a story about a time when you struggled to work with someone else. Perhaps you didn't even like that person. Perhaps you disliked that person, but then you suddenly had an insight into why they were acting the way they were or what was driving them. You developed a sense of empathy for them and were able to work through the issues. Maybe you forged a great relationship, or maybe you just found a way to get by with that difficult coworker. But either way, this will illustrate empathy and the ability to collaborate with people, even if they are difficult. Yes, any employer wants to know that you can work with all different kinds of people. They don't want people that are abrasive. 4. Creativity. This one is a bit trickier. When I interview candidates, I ask a question designed to elicit a story about creativity. So be careful about how you interject this into conversation. Tell a story about a time you figured out a solution to something difficult in a creative way. Maybe talking about a business you started, even something as simple as a lawn mowing business as a kid, or a project you did at church, or a summer project. I ask the person to tell me an idea that they've had for a company or product or non-profit or service and what is it, what is exciting about it to them. Then I ask them to think through several aspects of the idea and expand on it until they finally either prove that they can think things through and to the end, or that they run into a wall at some point. Either way, it's very illuminating as an interviewer. Okay, this is pretty good advice, but man, are you trying to steal their business ideas? I'm just saying. But I get it. You want to have some creativity, and I think that I wouldn't necessarily tell. Well, I could tell them about my podcast. That's one thing that I would talk about, and I can get really nitty gritty into all the technological nuances of things that I do when I'm interviewing people. Oh, I'd have a lot of fun talking about that. But I don't know if that's what I'd necessarily talk about for creativity. I think, um, I don't know, when I was a kid, I wanted to make a golf ball vending machine. That was kind of fun. But all right. Anyways, they go on to say, I hope this is helpful. Just remember, hiring managers are looking for team members. They're figuring it out. If they're figuring out if they like you as well as if you're qualified. So it's really important that you let them look at you, the real you, so they can assess you for who you actually are. I've filed people out of interview processes because they were too guarded and weren't letting me get to know them. One last thing, as much as you're being interviewed, you should be interviewing them. Show up with good questions, do research about the company before you show up, and have a good reason for why you want to work there. If you discover that you don't like the people interviewing, find out if they're someone you will have to work with every day or if they're not someone you will work with every day. It may not be worth it to take the job if you don't like the people. Such good advice. I mean, this is just really good advice. So, if you're struggling, if you're finding out that you're just not getting success, getting calls back after interviews, watch this advice. Read this. I'll post the link. But this is just absolutely wonderful advice, and I think that everybody should consider um, following this advice. So yeah, this is good stuff. So think about it. Consider it. I'll send the link. I kind of put my comments in throughout, so I don't have too many comments. So let's go to the comments. Yeah, so let's look at some insights here. Most interviewers are not good at interviewing, so you need to help them along, especially if they're not somebody in HR. If they're just a hiring manager, they're probably not the best interviewer. Good insight. What are the insights? I would add looking for curiosity. I want people who are going to be interested in the larger context and how they fit into it, who are going to teach themselves the things they don't know. These are the people that will come up with proactive solutions to problems before they happen and not view something as outside their purview. And I commented here, I said, Amen. I'll tell you that working with the people that have the first instinct of that is out of my purview are some of the most frustrating people to work with. I get setting boundaries, but at some point you need to take initiative. I don't I replied to your comment, but it's outside my purview. Also, are you hiring? Um, yeah, if you have no professional curiosity, as this person said here, it just is difficult. So yeah, um, I just think that that's really good advice. So thank you, Mister U slash the real Picard one for that advice. It's actually e- excellent advice, actionable, and I have given you a upvote for it. So good job, Reddit karma coming your way. All right. Next question. Oh, by the way, if you have any other insights on that, please just leave your comments below. I think that um, sharing advice in the comment section is a great way to help people out. So share your advice. All right, next one.
Does anyone else on here prefer not to prepare for interviews? I feel like I've seen a bunch of interview related posts lately, for obvious reasons that don't need to be explained. But I always read through them and am shocked with just how much preparation some people are putting into what sometimes amounts to 30 minutes of standard questions from potential future coworkers. Am I the only one that prefers to go into interviews with a clear mind, without rehearsed lines that I would fumble over trying to recall? Not to say that if it was a super specialized role that I wouldn't at least brush up on a particular topic. But I know my work experience. I know the roles and responsibilities I performed. I personally feel like it's easier for me to just naturally answer questions in an interview without it being a generic response. It also gives me the ability to go with the flow of the interview and oftentimes go way off course because I answered a question one way that opened up an entirely new path for the interview to go. And had I rigorously prepared for the interview to go 1, 2, 3, I never would have been able to fluently and naturally just went off course. I can't be the only one, right? And for what it's worth, this has worked for me. And worked well. I'm just myself. Nothing more. Nothing less. But my potential employers leave knowing exactly who I am, and I feel like that leaves little doubt about what I can actually do in the role I'm applying for.
Yeah, so I'll say that I don't think it's good to say don't prepare for interviews. I think that I get the point that this person is making. But I think that there is a bare minimum of what you need to do to prepare for an interview. So, for example, researching the company, knowing generally what the company does, that's called preparing for an interview. And then also just having a general idea of what your stories are for the typical interview questions. I think that that's also a good thing. So, talking about a time that you worked with somebody, we just listened to a bunch of really good advice. So, have your stories prepared on common interview questions, and you don't have to know them word for word, but just knowing generally what you want to talk about, I think is good because that way you're not spending time fumbling for a story and trying to think of a story. You can just spend more time in the interview just I don't know talking about getting to know each other better and kind of figuring out what you want like or don't like about that company. But no, I get it. Don't rehearse your don't don't have every single word down for exactly what you're going to say for each question, but generally have those stories queued so that you can tell the most impactful story. I think that you can come across better whenever you are able to tell the most impactful story, and you don't have to say it the same way every single time. But yeah, no, you have to prepare for interviews. So know your stories and know the company and the people that you're interviewing with. Maybe even do a research on the person that's your interviewer. so you can figure out some common threads you can bring up between yourself and them in the interview. So, no, I'd say not preparing, going in raw for an interview is not ideal. I wouldn't recommend doing that. So, um, yeah, I wouldn't recommend doing that. So, um, next question. No, because no, I don't not prepare for interviews. I do prepare. I did prepare. I did a lot of prep for my interviews, my most recent interviews. All right, here you go. Next question.
Offered a salary of $105,000 for a large contractor in LA. Is this reasonable? I have experience of 4 years in heavy civil and educational background of BS in civil engineering and MS in construction engineering. Need tips on negotiating. Note, my current gross salary is $90,000 in Austin, TX.
So it sounds like that this new job is not going to pay enough to maintain your cost of living that you currently have. So let's do a little quick research. Cost of living calculate converter. So this is pretty cool. You can go to one of these websites. Let's try nerdwallet.com. So let's go current city, Austin, Texas. New city, LA. And let's go 90,000. So for this even the cost of living is 51% higher. So yeah, 105K is not reasonable at all. In fact, you should probably this is like the bare minimum. I would be going for 150 to 170 because this is just the bare minimum. Your housing costs are 100% higher. Everything is higher. Everything is higher. So, I mean, this doesn't even, I mean, honestly, I feel like you need to double your income to really feel any kind of raise in your lifestyle. So, no, you shouldn't, you shouldn't be going for that. And honestly, it sounds like, I mean, it sounds like you're too far apart, to be honest. It sounds like you're too far apart. So, sorry about that. It doesn't seem like it's the opportunity for you, but, uh, yeah. Here we go. Just gave an offer to a 5-year engineer in Orange County, 120 heavy civil. Is that the minimum I should be asking? Any tips on negotiation? Um, Honestly, for LA standards, that salary is crap. Um, yeah, this just doesn't. Maybe it's Louisiana. If it's Louisiana, that's a raise. But if it's LA, that's terrible. And yeah, you should be getting you should be getting per diem if you're going over there. So maybe there's a more money waiting for you in the form of per diem. So that can make it feasible. So maybe ask about per diem. So yeah, no, this is not good. And I mean, I'd say if you're trying to negotiate this, ask about per diem, point out cost of living issues, and and then maybe counter with 130, 135, so you can break even, and then ask about per diem on top of that. But if there's no per diem involved in this, it just seems like y'all are way too far apart. So um, I'm sorry. It seems like it's just not going to be the opportunity that you want to be, but maybe I'm wrong. So wish you the best of luck with your negotiation, though. All right, next one.
On my resume, I change my previous job titles to popular names since I feel like it's easier for people to understand my work experience. Is there any problem with that? One example is I worked at a company where I had the job title IT Solutions Engineer/Analyst. My assumption is that most people probably wouldn't understand what that job title means. However, on my resume I changed my job title to just Software Developer. Since, my manager told me my role is to be a software developer like 100 times and just wanted me to do projects related to coding. Also, I feel like if a recruiter sees software developer then it's a lot more clear to them about what I did. If my previous job title is already a popular name I don't change it though. For example, my first job I had was data entry. I just leave the title data entry because I feel like pretty much everyone knows what that means. I feel like everyone pretty much knows what that type of job is.
Yeah, I don't see any issue with this. I feel like the point of your resume is they have, as Mark Levine said in the last interview, is they only looking at your resume for 5 to 7 seconds. So you need to put on titles that they recognize. So no ethical quandaries there. Just as long as you have a title and then a description of what you did and your description matches the title, then that makes sense. I mean, I wouldn't do title inflation. Like it would be pretty bad to make yourself a CFO or a CEO if you were just a data entry person. But if you're changing your title to be something more recognizable, that you're just doing the recruiter a favor, and they're not going to just call up the other company and be like, "Hey, did you have this specific title?" And then your current employer will be like, "Oh no, he had this specific title, and he definitely didn't do anything that resembles that." They're not going to have those conversations. I don't. I mean, it's rare. I mean, maybe somebody knows somebody, but it's rare that they'll have that conversation. Um, somebody said, as with everything job related, the pearl clutching in this thread makes for great drama and poor advice. 90% of the battle in getting selected for that first interview is being an easy scan for an entry level recruiter who has often very little or no background in the roles they're recruiting. Again, you want to be recognizable. That means that folks with obvious title progression win out almost always. The folks here telling you that a recruiter should know what your titles mean haven't worked in recruiting, nor have they seen how often the initial screening job falls to the least experienced most put upon folks on a recruiting team. As both a former HR person and now as a high volume independent contractor, simplifying job titles in my resume has been a game changer in terms of getting that first initial look. I've gone through 2 dozen comprehensive reference and background checks in the last year and never had a single issue. That's because simplifying my titles had nothing to do with lying and everything to do with making HR's job easier. They recognize and reward that. So, simplify your title and list your job description below. And whenever your job description matches the title and is stuff that you actually did and can talk about in your interview, you're not going to have an issue. So, yes, there's no problem with this. I don't see anything wrong with it. But if you disagree with me, make sure to write in to Daniel at ENGRingsuccess.com, Daniel at engineeringsuccess.com, or comment down below because commenting down below is the best thing you can do to help this show. All right, next question.
Dozed off in a Zoom meeting with a client. I'm an intern in my second week with a big company. So far my boss likes my work and is quite happy. We had a Zoom meeting with a client about an hour ago. The meeting lasted 1 hour 30 minutes and I started dozing off during the last 10 to 15 minutes with my camera on. My boss noticed and sent me a private message saying, "Come on, and why are you sleeping, are you okay?" etc. I told him I didn't notice that I look like I'm sleeping and I have a headache. He's working remotely today and he said we'll talk about this tomorrow when he's in the office. I massively fup, I know. At all. But how do I approach this tomorrow and what can I expect from his side? For context, I am being paid respectably for an intern and the environment so far is much better than my previous internships. Edit, thanks to all that are concerned. I don't have sleep apnea and I just dozed off because I was running on 2 hours of sleep.
Update came before my boss today and he passed my desk on the way to his. I told him I was sorry for my actions yesterday and that there's no valid reason or excuse for what happened and that it was easily avoidable by at least turning off the camera. He told me he assumed I was fasting for Ramadan and what happened was understandable in his point of view, but he was mostly frustrated with the fact that I could have closed the camera. Overall, though, he was happy that I took responsibility for the situation and hoped that I would act more aptly in the future. So, great learning experience, not the end of the world. Yes, I think that in this situation, this person did the best thing is just approach it immediately, go before your boss and just tell him what happened, apologize, acknowledge what's going on and say it won't happen again and what you're going to do to make it not happen again. But yeah, not good decorum to fall asleep during a meeting with a client. I mean, but dude, I mean, it makes sense, right? It happens. People are talking around you, not at you. You're not engaged in the conversation. You get tired. If you need to take a break, just turn off the camera, step away, to a stretch, a yawn, maybe even mute yourself and go, blah. Just do some noises to wake yourself up, slap yourself in the face, get some water, anything you can do to get some coffee, anything you can do to stay more engaged. I mean, maybe if it had a headset, step away, grab some coffee, come back. It's not unreasonable for somebody to step away and turn off their camera for a second during a meeting. I do it all the time. And it's not because I'm not paying attention. Okay, maybe sometimes it is because I am struggling with the conversation. But I think that happens to everybody and everybody can relate to that. So let's see what the comments said. I fell asleep in a three-person huddle room meeting with my team, like just narcoleptic, instantly asleep. They were real confused. Had other issues passing out in meetings, always early afternoon after lunch. My boss actually took a picture of me passed out in a 20-person meeting. Embarrassing. This led to me discovering undiagnosed diabetes. So probably added a few years to my life getting that under control. So as long as it's not a recurring issue, maybe not the thing that you're dealing with, but good on you for stepping in front of it and taking accountability. All right, next one is I forgot to copy the text into my robo speaker. Here we go.
Messed up by looking for a new job? My employer recently announced that our yearly raises and bonuses, now months overdue, won't happen for most people this year. The company has been cutting back on benefits as well despite record profits each quarter, and record growth in sales pipeline. The company will probably do very well this year despite the potential recession. Upset, I replied to a recruiter who reached out to me through LinkedIn, then I interviewed, and it seems that I'm likely to get an offer. But I like my supervisor and my team, so now I'm getting cold feet. Should I wait to see whether my supervisor will get raises for me and the team despite the company announcement, or should I just see what the new offer will be, if I get one? I don't want to be a jerk, but maybe I've gone too far.
You haven't gone too far. You were upset. Your company was supposed to, you expect raises and bonuses to keep up with inflation every year and also to just advance your earnings as part of growing in your career. And this company has decided that despite doing really well as a company, they're not going to give them out. So, what did you do? You said, "Well, if I'm not going to get paid what I'm worth here, I'm going to go see if there's another place that will pay me what I'm worth." That is what you did. And you shouldn't feel like a jerk for doing that. Your company is a jerk for doing what they did. So, should you wait and see? No, you don't wait and see. Waiting and seeing is how you have career stagnation without salary growth. You take action, and that's what you did. So, you have an offer. Here's what you do with it. Is the offer question is the offer going to be better pay? So they said new company almost certainly pays more and includes a bonus, but not sure how much yet. Current company said no raises and no bonuses for most people as they cut benefits more and more as time goes on. Current boss is a nice person to work for. The new boss seemed okay, but less warm during interviews. New employer is a startup and hopes to raise more money within 1.5 years. Um, I'd say wait until you get an offer, and then if you, I get that I get that your boss is nice, and that's good, but I don't really think it'll really hurt you to say, hey, Um, are these raises going to apply to everybody? Otherwise, I need to make more money to keep up with cost of living. So, and yeah, I would at least consider the switch. I mean, if you bring it up with your boss, then be prepared to, if you get an offer and you do bring it up with your boss, make sure that you're prepared to actually leave because that's what you're setting yourself up for if you have that conversation. So, if you are prepared to actually leave, then take it and have a conversation with your boss. I get that you like your supervisor and your team. I mean, if you feel like you're making enough, then you can do that and feel okay with working for a company that's behaving the way your company is behaving. If you can, but don't. That's what you're choosing if you choose to stay, because I believe in the saying that when somebody shows you who they are, or a company shows you who they are, you believe them. And this company is showing their colors. And somebody said down below, sounds like companies propping up numbers in preparation for a potential sell-off. I worked for two corporations that did this exact same thing. Best numbers seen in a decade, raises withheld, no bonuses, no PTO accrual, and then a year later they are announced that they are bought out. Don't hold your breath with large companies. You're only a number to them. If this new job sounded like a good career move, then do it and use it as an opportunity to shine and keep moving up. Yeah. So your mileage may vary, but you obviously felt validated in searching elsewhere, and you should always, there's nothing wrong with that because what would they do if the tables were turned? I mean, obviously they're not giving you raises, so that's what they're doing. So, okay, next question from the top.
Help with internships. Hey guys. I wanted some advice on what to do. I have an internship offer that I accepted with a large firm in my state for the summer. However, I just received an offer for another smaller out-of-state company that I really want to take. Is there a way to turn down the one that I have already accepted, or should I continue with it?
Yeah, there is a way to do it. You just say, "Hey, I got a better opportunity. I'm gonna have to back out." But question is do you really want to do that? I mean, what is making this other one better? Is it better pay, more interesting work? Which one are you more likely to want to work for after you graduate? Because that's where the relationship is important. So, um, you're not burning a bridge if you say no to the second company. You are burning a bridge if you back out of your internship offer with the first company. How far along are you in with the first company? I think you said you're just in with a background screen. Um, I said in the comments, is the second one a slam dunk better than the first? How likely will it be that you get a return offer from them? And would you want to work for them in their location in the future? You're probably going to be placed on a don't hire list at the first company if you renege. But if you're okay with that, it's as simple as sending an email that explains you're going in a different direction and thanking them for the offer. That being said, did you sign anything for the first one? He said the only thing they've done so far is start a background check. I said, I mean, it's your call, but if you feel like it's a better opportunity, I'd go for the second one. It's not like the companies keep a list of bad interns or anything and share it with other companies in the industry. Did you get the internship through school? You may get a scolding from your career center. Um, you got the first internship through a career fair, and then the second one is a little bit more unique. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I think you got to play the long game here because really, what's the point of internships? Getting experience and getting yourself hireable. So if you renege from the first one, you're not going to be able to get a job from them after you graduate. So think about that. And if you're okay with that, then you can do it. But just do it knowing that you're not going to be able to go back to them and get a job later. They're not going to hire you again because you're a flight risk. You've already demonstrated it. So yeah, please let us know which one you choose though, and how it works out for you though, because I hope that I hope that whichever one you take is the best one for you. So really, I mean, it's your choice, but just make the choice knowing what the consequences are. But you can definitely do it. You can definitely quit. All right, next one.
Interviewed for a remote job, now asking if I'd be willing to relocate. Hi friends. I interviewed for a job that told me explicitly I could be remote and they would fly me out here and there. I got an email today asking if I'd be willing to relocate and within what time frame. Is this a red flag? It should be noted that the cost of living of this area they're asking me to relocate to is extremely high. Any advice on the topic is appreciated. Edit, they did not mention anything about relocation during the interview. They advertised the job as being remote. Edit 2, y'all LMFAO they retracted the remote option. I am open to relocating but only if they adequately compensate me. I just cannot believe how fast they switched up. Edit 3, thanks so much everyone for the help and advice. I really appreciate all of the comments.
So it sounds like they're about to implement a company-wide return to office policy and eliminate remote work. And they did that maybe after they posted this position and after they started interviewing for you. But yeah, good on you for realizing that the cost of living is really high and you're going to need a substantial cost pay bump. And they should know that as a company too. They should know that their cost of living in their area is high. That's why they were doing remote work because it was saving them money, and they're now going to make the financial investment of returning all the people to office and paying more money to do so. So hold firm, do the calculators. NerdWallet has one. I'd say do that cost of living calculator, and then also just do like a quick sanity check on rent and increase your salary, I'd say proportionate to how much rent is going to go up for you to live in a comparable area. So if you're living in the best part of, I mean, I don't know if you can go best part of Charlotte versus best part of LA. I mean, gosh, I mean, maybe that's not the best tool, but just think about how your life is going to change if you relocate and what that work is worth to you financially. So let's go down to the comments. I mean, it's an obvious sign that they're planning to return to the office. But they explicitly told me the position could be remote. It will be until they make you return to the office. You can't return if you never were there. Touche. All right. What else? I'd ask a couple questions. What's your budget for my relocation expenses? Yes, that's a good one because you need to be they need to relocate you on their dime. So sometimes companies just give you flat out cash for that. Sometimes they'll actually pay for your full move. Is there allowance for my moving expenses? Ask for transparency on why they need to relocate. Are we talking transitioning away from work from home? Are we talking a monthly meeting? I research the salary versus cost of living in that particular area. I need more information. Um, Bait and switch. Could have been just a bait and switch. OMG, this is happening to me right now. I was hired to do customer service, which has quickly turned into sales and customer retention. I don't make one commission. It's BS. Yeah, bait and switch. They do that with this is the new SOP for companies on the brink of collapse for labor shortages. I just saw this talked about at a conference. They tell you it's remote, you move, they pull, well, since you're already here, if you want the position to stay remote, tell them you're not willing to relocate and your employment contract needs to reflect that the position is fully remote. If they won't do it, move on or be willing to relocate. Um, yeah, that sucks, but I mean, it sounds like they're returning to office and you just need to make the decision using your new information. And if you weren't planning on relocating, if you don't want to relocate, then, maybe it's not worth relocating for. But if it's that good of a position, then maybe you can get the money for it. And if you really want to work for this company, then maybe that would work. All right. Next question.
Ex-employer wants paid back for school. Worked for a company for a couple years, went to school for 2 semesters paid by them. We had no agreement signed and never said I'd have to pay back for classes. Does he have any merit requiring me to pay back for the classes?
Yeah, so I'm going to go with the top commenter and say companies almost always have work requirements attached to tuition reimbursement. I assume you had to submit a form and get them to pay it. There's likely a lot of fine print attached. You can talk to HR about the situation, but my gut says they probably have the right. And my gut says this person probably just forgot signing this. Though, in the this is why you need to get things in writing and keep them for yourself. Um, though this person shared another experience. I would say you're in the clear. My own situation was the company would pay about $5,000 a calendar year. I claimed the first 2 years and was planning on quitting because, frankly, we got bought out and they're run by a-holes, but that's another story. I believe you're supposed to stay in a minimum of 6 months from a payment or 2 years after final qualifications. Anyways, a couple of managers that were from the original company said, why not apply for reimbursement this year, even if you're leaving? The worst they can do is ask for it back. I even went to the accounting person that did wages and asked a hypothetical question. The response was, if no one specifically asked me to search for tuition reimbursement when someone leaves, then I'm not going to look for it. So I claimed my money, never heard a thing. Now, to be fair, um, this person says small company, 4 employees, zero agreement made. Um, yeah, did you pay taxes on the money? Because I mean, if you paid taxes on it as a form of income received from your employer, then I mean, I don't really think it's hard for them to, it even makes it more complicated for them to ask for it back. Um, and that's foolish of them to not have a contract. So, here's what somebody says: if OP's employers try to pursue this legally, a normal lawyer will ask them to show the contract is being enforced. Yeah, there's no documentation. So, I'd say it sucks for them, sucks for you that you're having to deal with the situation, but it doesn't seem like they have any recourse because there's no written policy. So it seems like, I mean, you've already received the goods that are the tuition reimbursements. I don't it doesn't seem like there's a policy. Now they might try to get sketchy with it and try to create a policy and backdate it, but maybe just try to get something in writing from them via email saying, hey, like, just to confirm, there is no policy in place. So there's nothing written. We didn't sign an agreement. And just get them to kind of maybe affirm that via in writing. And maybe that can help your case and can keep you solid if they do try to pursue you, like in small claims court or something. But um, No, that's a difficult situation, but that's some advice for some small business owners. Is your policies and procedures are important, so make sure that you develop those. As somebody that spends a lot of time looking at policies and procedures, it's very important. All right, next one.
Would you say calculus were the hardest courses in your program? I certainly feel this way, perhaps because I'm a Comp E student, but calculus was a whole ass nightmare to me. The reason for that is my basic foundation for maths was always shitty, and our university's exams are ridiculously hard. Our professor said that the average mark for C1 in most semesters for most classes are in the 50% or low 60s, occasionally as low as in the 40s. I dropped Calculus 1 one time, and the second time I had to take a full pre-calculus course in order to feel comfortable solving C1 questions. Good news is that I got 88% in C1, 96% in C2 and 92% in C3, which I'm so proud of since, as I said, I'm extremely bad at mathematics. It's undeniable though that I spent an absurd amount time practicing for every exam, and IMO those three courses, especially C1, were by far the hardest courses I've took.
Yeah, I have the top comment here, and I say Calc 3 was challenging to me, but my PDE class was significantly harder. Fluid mechanics, thermo, heat transfer, and honestly, most of my other junior, senior year coursework was more challenging than my hardest calculus class. No, yeah, calculus is by no means the hardest course in my engineering program. Not even close. I mean, it's probably one of the easiest courses in our program, actually, to be honest. But now every program is different, different professors, different exams. Everybody's different. Different experiences are different. Some universities try to weed people out, and then, but no, I'll be honest, it wasn't even close. And I'm not saying that it's just saying anything about your program because every program is structured differently. But no, not by a long shot. The hardest class is always the class with the worst professors. Yeah. No, not even close for me. I'd say E&M or analog electronics. Signals and systems was much harder. Calc 2 and Calc 3 are some of the most enjoyable and easiest courses for me to understand. We're reading the comments. Material science was harder. At the time, I thought Calc 2 and differential equations were awful, but looking back, they were cakewalks compared to fluid mechanics and thermo. They were pretty easy. Easy, nowhere near close. My math classes were significantly easier than thermo. Aerodynamics, no question. That was brutal. OP, are you struggling in calculus? If you are, get some resources because upper division courses are coming. Easiest. Some of the most straightforward classes. Not the hardest class. Definitely not as an electronics and computer engineer myself. Wait till you get to signal processing. Calc 1 is probably the easiest. Yeah, so everybody agrees with me. Not even close. But that's um luck. I wish you the best. The good news is that all your other classes do build upon your other classes. So you're going to be able to apply that knowledge. But no, calculus was not even remotely close to the most difficult course in my program. It was, looking back, it was really easy. And the only reason why I somewhat struggled in Calc 3 was because my study habits were crap because I was a freshman first semester. But I took the same professor and for differential equations and linear algebra, and I made A's easy. So nope, not not difficult at all. All right, next question.
U of M for 20K a year or Michigan Tech for 12K a year? I have gotten into both schools. I would rather go to U of M for the college experience, etc., but I am wondering, based on opportunity and academics alone, is a me degree from U of M worth 8K more per year than one from MTU?
I'm gonna go probably not. Because again, once you get your first, I've said this, once you get your first job, nobody really cares where you went. But is the $8,000 a year, so $32,000 worth maybe having a slightly wider net to cast into whenever you're applying for jobs fresh out of school? Maybe. But I'm guessing that Michigan Tech has a really good network of alumni and people working as well. So I mean, if you're just looking at the financial perspective, I doubt that. Um, that there are that many jobs that you couldn't get into as a Michigan Tech grad that you will get into as a Michigan grad. I doubt. I doubt it. I'm guessing that a lot of the employers that employ Michigan grads also employ Michigan Tech grads. Um, that being said, yeah, it's probably not worth it financially. But if you want to go to U of M, go for it. I mean, why not? It's only 8K a year. That's 32,000. You'll make that back pretty quick. So let's see what the comments say. Taking college spirit experience out of the equation, go to Michigan if you want a national job market, SpaceX type of places. Go to Michigan Tech for a regional job market. Michigan engineering alum, although I'm not working for a household name, have plenty of friends that are. So yeah, I guess maybe Michigan Tech has a better national reputation. So if you want to get out of Michigan, U of M has some of the best engineers I've ever met. I'd say the actually 32 for their program is worth it. One of a few cases though. I've worked with several Michigan Tech alumni, all very knowledgeable and engineers as well. Not like they were lacking by any means. I've always just been impressed with how knowledgeable Michigan and Georgia Tech engineers are. So I'm biased to thinking they have two of the best programs. If I could do it over, I'd go to one of those two. You Mitch. I go to UM for electrical engineering. I considered and visited MTU as well for a tour. My sister goes to MTU. I recommend UM unless you're aiming for a particular job in the Northern Midwest region and love wintertime. I feel like the ROI I've gotten from UM has been insane. I've gotten to do research and get published as an undergrad due to the volume of research funding here. The college is also well known enough that it gets respect from federal agencies and looking to hire engineers. I'm not sure MTU would ring as loudly to hiring managers south of Toledo. Obviously, I'm quite biased towards UM, but the tuition isn't really much higher from what I feel to be a large jump in offerings. MTU is a good school. I have several friends going there. Um, it depends on what you want to go to. If you want to go into industry, either will be fine. Arguably, MTU is better because that's what they focus on. If you want to go to graduate school, UM may be better. Um, I don't care. I don't personally care. Um, I wouldn't care. I wouldn't care where you went. So depends on where that extra 8K is coming from. If it's coming from your parents, and you're financially able to do it, then just convince them. If it's coming from student loans, think about it a little bit more. Think about also what the cost of living is in those areas. I'm guessing Ann Arbor, I think that's where Michigan is a little bit more expensive to live in than wherever Michigan Tech is, but I don't know. Um, but man, if you want to go to UM, just go to UM. That's what I say. If you want to go to UM, just go to UM. I mean, for me, it made a lot more practical sense for me to go to an engineering school that was a big state school. But I'm so glad I went to Trinity. Not as ranked as high, but it was the program that I wanted to go to, the program where I felt like I would learn the best. So if one of those programs is a program where you feel like you learn best, choose that. And my career has worked out exactly the way it needed to do because of it. And I met my wife along the way. So I don't regret it. And if you really want to go to UM, then just go to UM. All right, next question. Goes as following.
I have a dynamics exam in a couple of hours. Please pray for me. I have not prepared properly because I'm burnt out. Hopefully, I'll be able to logic it out. Update, I've lucked out. At worst, I predict 77 80ths.
They actually say 67 out of 80 or 77 out of 80. I don't know. My copy came in as 77 and their thing says 67. Um, yeah, so I've been in that situation before, where you don't feel like you've prepared enough for an exam and you have 2 hours left. So here's what I would do. That time between classes where you have an exam coming up, do as much as you can to de-stress. So if you need to eat, if you haven't eaten, it's in mealtime, eat the meal. And then if you have any resources that you're allowed to use during the exam, make sure that you're familiar with those resources and your resources are updated. And then lastly, if you have a little bit of time left, do a one practice problem or two practice problems. Do a couple of practice problems, however many you can do, that really just kind of get through the material. So like a really comprehensive one and make sure that you understand the connections. And that's what I do with 2 hours. That's what I do with 2 hours left before an exam, is just kind of make sure that you're not hungry and you don't have other external factors affecting you. Um, Make sure that you're familiar with your materials, and then do a couple practice problems, but do them in that order, because at that point you're not going to reinvent the wheel and you're not going to fully learn the course material in 2 hours. So they say in a couple hours I have not prepared properly. Don't burn the ship yet. Yeah. I've passed a few exams by finding out one or two things while reviewing in the last few hours before a test. Yeah. So don't give up on it. Get yourself in the right headspace. Eat that meal, and then kind of do that last 2 bits of studying, and that will be you'll be fine. So, all right, and they were fine. So, but that's good general advice for everybody. All right, last question of the podcast. Here we go. Should I be aspiring? Ooh, I almost started reading it.
Should I be aspiring to transfer to a more prestigious school? Or does prestige not really matter for engineering for finding a job, international student? I'm currently in pre-engineering at the University of Utah and my prereq courses are going quite well so far.
Utah.
I was wondering if I should bother thinking about transferring to a better school, because my end goal is definitely finding a job once I graduate and potentially getting a visa sponsored or being lucky and winning the visa lottery. I can tell the University of Utah Engineering Department is very serious, and are willing to spend more money than other departments, but I was wondering if I should be trying even harder in my next semesters to get a high GPA to keep an option of transferring open. I wouldn't be transferring to any school with a significantly higher tuition, but I've heard schools like Georgia Tech have basically the same tuition fees. Edit. Like apparently the ECE department for the University of Utah has a 99% job placement rate with like a median 88K salary, and the reason I'm asking is if a better school is even worth it if my current program seems solid enough. Maybe as an international student I'll need to try harder? Just want some opinions, thank you.
Yeah, in this instance, I don't really think it's worth trying to transfer. You're already at the school. Just finish it out. Um, I don't really think it matters that much. Again, we talked about this earlier with the Michigan versus MTU. I mean, if you really want to go to Georgia Tech, I mean, you can, but not everything is probably going to transfer. You're going to probably delay your graduation time, and then I wouldn't really mess with that. I mean, yes, the tuition might not be higher, but you have to take extra classes to make up for things because they're going to have different general requirements than University of Utah. It's not going to be a one-to-one transfer. You're going to incur more costs by doing that. And Utah is a great school. First of all, I've heard of it, and that helps. I mean, people have heard, oh, University of Utah, big school, good football program, good at basketball. Oh, I bet they have a good engineering program too, because blah. That I mean, that's what goes through people's head, and then they, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. University of Utah has a lot of resources, good engineering school program. Let's see where University of Utah engineering school ranking. Ranked number 57 in best engineering schools. Yeah, dude, come on. Yeah, don't bother. It's not worth it. It's a great school, top 100 engineering program in the nation. It's solid. You don't need to transfer. And and unless you just hate it there, but I mean, no. Once you've gotten your first job, nobody really cares where you went to school. Again, once you've gotten your first, repeat after me, everybody. Once you've gotten your first job, nobody cares where you went to school. Okay. So yeah, and not everything is going to transfer one for one. So in your instance, I would not transfer. You use a good program, don't worry about transferring. All that matters is that you get your first job, then nobody will care where you went to undergrad. UU has both the solid program and the brand recognition where people that don't know much about the program know that it's a big school. Your salary isn't going to change if that's your focus. I don't know somebody who went into my field, aerospace, who's paid more than their peers just because they went to MIT. The moment you graduate, you're put in the pool of barely qualified engineer along everyone else. Nobody cares. It's a perfectly good program. You don't need to switch. So that's my advice for you. So anyways, now you've wasted another perfectly good hour 20 listening to this episode of the Engineering Success Podcast. I hope it wasn't actually wasted. I hope you got a lot out of it. I really appreciate y'all's support. Again, the best way you can support the podcast is by commenting down below if you're watching on YouTube, or by sharing with your friends and other people that you think may benefit from this content. If you want to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcast or somewhere else, and then send it to me at daniel@engringsuccess.com with any of your questions you want answered on the pod, and I'd be happy to have you. What's going on with the pod? We're trying to get a couple more interviews lined up. We're doing our best, so stay tuned for that. But other than that, I will catch you guys in the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I really appreciate your support, and I will catch you in the next one. Thanks.
I'm miscommunicating. I just made a pilot, then they threw me on the stations. Nah, I'm not complaining. Nah, I'm not complaining. My thoughts get complicated. I cannot explain in lameness. Never losing focus because I ain't chasing payments. Still playing in the basement while I'm working on arrangements. They heard the kid in 50 countries. Thank God that's amazing. But I'd rather thank Spotify. They put me on the station.